Welcome to this edition of On the Scene. I'm your host, Tim Kelly. On today's program, we're talking winter weather preparedness, specifically how the City of Suffolk and the Public Works Department are preparing for this upcoming winter so that we can handle any situations that will be happening out there on the City of Suffolk roads. Stay tuned. Welcome back to On the Scene. We're coming to you now from the Public Works Operations Center on Carolina Road, and we're joined by LJ Hanson, who's Assistant Director of Public Works. LJ, thanks for being with us on this rather brisk day, and actually it's unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, perfect weather conditions considering what we're getting ready to talk about. And that is winter weather preparedness here in the City of Suffolk, especially when we're talking about our roads. And for that, again, we have our expert here from Public Works. LJ, what has gone on so far with the Public Works Department to prepare for this winter season? And I know it started several months back.
It really does. It starts in the fall. We make sure that we have all of our equipment in working order, and that's quite a challenge. You know, as things sit over the summer months, they break down in the heat and that type of thing. We have behind us, we have a truck that's a regular dump truck. You might see it any time of the year as a dump truck. And we have another one that's going to pass us here.
Right.
On the front of it, we have a plow, just like any other plow, but it's just an attachment. It goes on the front of the dump truck.
Correct.
And in the back, we have a spreader unit. In the City of Suffolk, we maintain 28 trucks like that.
Okay.
And so in the fall months, we have to make sure that the plows have new blades on them and that they're ready to go, and that the spreaders are calibrated and maintained appropriately.
Right. We'll let this guy pass through first. And again, it looks like we set this up, but they're actually in action right now preparing for whatever's going on. So again, we'll have some other vehicles passing through in the middle of the interview, but again, it's your Public Works Department in action out here. Now, the other vehicle we have here is a brine truck. Tell us what that means.
So a brine truck is a vehicle that we use to put a liquid salt solution in, and that liquid salt solution sprays out of some nozzles on the back of it. We put that down about 24 to 48 hours in advance of a winter weather event when we can. It
Right.
doesn't always work that we can use it like that.
Sure.
That brine solution is mixed up. We have a piece of equipment that we use to make that solution, and we can store it on site, and then we fill those containers, and each one of those containers holds about 1,000 gallons.
Now, I know some people wonder, well, look, if I get a brine solution once it's on the road on my vehicle, do I need to go out and get that car washed?
The brine solution is actually meant to go on the road, and once it hits dry pavement, it goes in and it kind of sticks to the pavement. And you don't see those white lines going down the road.
Right.
It's not likely that it's going to come up and get on your car. Of course, any time that you have salt, it's always a good idea.
That's correct.
Following any winter weather event, you probably want to wash your car.
Now, what's the determining factor for when the brine solution is used? You talked about the timetable for application. Again, that's based on how it actually works and adheres, or with the road, you want to make sure it's not being on there and then being washed off. But what determines when you put that out?
Right. Well, what salt does is it actually lowers the freezing point of water, so that it gives us the ability to make it so that ice forms at a lower level or stays or melts quicker.
Right.
What we're looking for are conditions that allow us to put it out where it sticks to the ground, and that it's not going to get washed off before the actual snow and ice come to the area.
Correct.
So that's a big part of it. In an event where it's rain turning to snow, it's not really a very useful treatment.
Got it. So again, I know some people have questioned as far as they're not out there, but they're not out there for a reason, because again, you want to make the best use of the material and also the personnel that are out there doing it, and also be the most effective that it can be on the roads itself. Now, when we talk about plows, of course, you referenced the truck here that's been outfitted behind us. What determines when you start plowing roads?
Well, the plow itself, you'll see the trucks out even as the snow starts to fall. We won't put the blade down until there's actually some accumulation of snow, and that's got to be more than an inch or two.
Got it.
The blade on the front of the plow is not a solid piece. If you were to look at the blade, you'd see that there's the curved part of the blade,
Sure.
and then on the bottom there's the actual blade that comes in contact
Right.
with the road.
Right.
As that runs down the road and you've got the aggregate, it wears those blades down. And we go through several of those in the course of a year.
Got it.
As a matter of fact, before the season started, we bought 100 of those blades.
Got it. Okay.
That's more than we'll use this year, but the point being that they do wear down, and we don't like to put those down all the way on the ground trying to get every bit of snow off. It's just not effective. It's not cost effective. And I think that's a popular misconception, is that if you just put the blade down, you'll scrape all the snow and ice off, but it just doesn't work like that. That's why we put the blade down. We keep it off the surface as much as we can, and then we throw the abrasive mix behind us. That's
Correct.
the salt and sand
To keep anything from freezing.
to try and get that last bit to melt off.
Melt off.
Right.
Got it. Okay. Now, as far as when you see the plow and you're in your vehicle, and again, of course, we always recommend that you're in snowy conditions, certainly the real hazardous conditions, to stay off the roads. But when a truck is out there plowing, what are some safety things that people need to consider about passing, being behind, being around that? Some things to consider.
Right. Well, first of all, the plow itself is throwing snow, and sometimes if you get into a drift or something like that, it can throw snow over the top or off to the side and then come back around, and that'll obscure your vision. So
Right.
you really, we say it all the time: don't crowd the plow.
Yes.
That's because you never know what's going to come off of
Right.
it. You can have ice or snow or blowing snow. In addition to that, we have the spreader on the back, and it's throwing a salt and sand mix, and that's really not very good for your car.
Right.
And also, it's not effective for us to be doing our jobs if you're in the way of that. So
Correct.
we really do ask that you maintain about 200 feet behind the plow. In some conditions, you're going to need to pass.
Sure.
And we understand that, but we really ask that
Right.
you're careful and
Correct.
that you, for the most part, if you don't have to pass, don't pass.
Got it. Now, of course, two other things behind us. We have a pile of sand and a pile of salt behind us as well. Now, this is not the only staging area where we're talking. Again, we're coming to you from Carolina Road. You have positions throughout the city of Suffolk that has the equipment and the resources we need to be able to respond, so that way people aren't jetting all the way across the city to refuel, so to speak, with these type of materials, right?
Right. The city of Suffolk is broke up into 4 public works zones, and each one of those zones has a salt and sand pile.
Got it. Now, when we talk about the roads and how things are prioritized, talk about how that goes for what gets plowed or what gets treated and when. And again, I think we pretty start out with the main arterial roads that we're really focusing on primarily, correct?
Right. Well, if we're pre-treating, one of our priorities is always going to be bridges and deckways. That's a big push for us because bridges tend to freeze before the roads do.
Right.
So pre-treatment, that takes a priority. And then our other priority, and certainly as the snow falls, is what we call our primary roads. And those are normally roads that are in the federal highway system.
Got it.
That would be Route 58,
Right.
Route 10, 460, 13, 32, 17, and those roads.
Got it. Now, as far as those roads, as far as how you do, what roads do you not plow? Again, we're talking private roads, correct? We don't touch those, correct?
Correct. Well, first off, VDOT does maintain control of 664.
Correct.
So that is not a Suffolk
right.
maintained road.
That's right.
So VDOT does maintain that. In addition, we don't plow private roads. And there is a priority that we roll through. As I mentioned, we do the primary roads first, secondary roads, and secondary roads are really defined as anything that's not a primary road. But having said that, we tend to focus on the connector routes. So
Right.
things like Shoulders Hill Road, Wilroy Road, Bennett's Pasture, Pittman Town, and those roads that are necessary for people to get to be able to get in and out of their areas.
Correct.
We don't, by and large, we don't get into the neighborhood roads very often. Southeastern Virginia doesn't see a lot of real heavy snow events.
Correct.
It's not to say that we never do.
Right.
It's just that it's very rare. It's very rare that we would get a snowstorm that would come in and put in that much snow. Usually by the time we're getting to the residential neighborhoods, it's already melted.
Got it. And again, do you know how many road miles we're talking about in the city of Suffolk? Because again, largest landmass city in the state, so we've got a lot of roads, correct?
Right. We maintain 1,200 lane miles of road.
Okay.
That's a lot of road.
Yes, it
And
is.
28 trucks. So.
So again, we got to get the men and the women that work in this department out there doing their job, and certainly focusing on the priorities to get the city going again, so to speak,
Right.
and then kind of touch it up as we need to. Hopefully, Mother Nature always cooperates with us. We're going to take a short break and come back with some more information about winter weather preparedness here. Again, focusing on public works and how we get our roads out there, get them clean, and get everybody moving around. So stay tuned. Welcome back to On the Scene, joined again by LJ Hansen, Assistant Director of Public Works. We're talking about winter weather preparedness here in the city of Suffolk. Now, of course, we already talked about, again, some tips that LJ had as far as if you're out there when people are plowing. Are there any things that people can do to help the road clearing process, or things that we don't do? Because I believe we don't touch driveways and things like that. If you want to just talk a little bit about that and kind of what the policies and procedures are.
Well, with regard to road clearing, it's, of course, anything that's not in our way is a benefit.
Sure.
Not parking on major streets would be a benefit.
Right.
Washington, Main Street, those types of places, if you don't have to park on them, that certainly makes our job a lot easier. Another thing that's worth noting is that you are responsible as a resident to make sure that the sidewalk in front of your house is clear. You have 6 hours from the time the snow stops falling that's supposed to be completed. Then another thing that I think is probably important for people to know, and oftentimes can be frustrating, is that when our plow goes by, it does leave a berm of snow.
Right.
And that berm is going to be very hard because it takes the wet layers from the bottom, moves them over to the top, and then as the cold weather freezes it, it turns into a very crusty mix. And if that's at the end of your driveway, it's a very frustrating thing.
Right.
Unfortunately, there's just no way that we cannot do that. It's just not possible for us to go along and make sure that everybody's driveway is not cased in with snow.
Now, when someone's clearing their own driveway, I guess the tip would be to probably push it to the side, don't push it out in the road, correct?
Right, because then what happens is we wind up having to go back and do that again, or it creates an icy spot on the road. And certainly that's more work for us, and it can be dangerous for the resident as well.
So again, we talked about as far as when the brine solution gets used and kind of the timetable with that. We talked about the plowing as well and the prioritization of roads. Let's talk one more time about that as far as, again, kind of how it gets staggered in. And I know it depends upon the severity of the weather event to determine exactly how widespread, if you will, the plowing and the road clearing is going to have to be, because Mother Nature will take care of some of that on its own, right?
Certainly, the sun is our biggest ally.
Yes.
And we, everything else that we do is designed to work with the sun. The sand works with the sun, the salt works with the sun.
Right.
But a bigger event, a more widespread event, is certainly going to dictate what our strategies are. And we do have a variety of strategies. Not every storm is the same.
That's correct, yes.
And every one of these circumstances we approach just a little bit differently.
Right.
A lot of it has to do with how the storm comes in, what
Right.
direction the wind's blowing.
Right.
And a city the size of Suffolk, we can see several different weather patterns inside the city. A lot of times somebody will look outside and say, gosh, it hardly snowed. Why did we close the city?
Right.
Well, in another part of the city, it snowed quite heavily.
That's
so,
right.
yeah.
And again, I guess that's the one thing, about the weather, that it's predictably unpredictable. So again, like you said, every situation, you can't pull out the textbook and go, we're going to go with plan number 2, because every situation is a little different, and it depends upon what area the city gets covered or not covered, and to what degree the factors there. Any other advice you would have for people when we have a winter weather event as far as trying to get out there on the roads? Certainly everybody, some people want to go out there and build a snowman and stuff in their own yard. Well, that's quite all right, but talk about, getting out there on the roads. I guess the best thing to do is follow, advice and reports that are getting out there, correct?
Right, and your department does a wonderful job of getting that information out.
Right.
Either by the media or on Facebook.
Correct.
A number of ways, and that information is really there for our safety, our safety as residents.
Sure.
And we certainly ask that people heed that advice.
Right.
If we ask that people stay off the roads, it's not because we're not doing our job. It's
Correct.
actually just to keep everybody safe.
Indeed. I guess safety is the key, and certainly we want to get the city opened back up as quickly as possible to get people back on with what they need to do. But again, safety is the key factor in driving that, both for our residents, our business owners, as well as for our personnel, because we don't want to put them in harm's way to perform some of the work they fortunately or unfortunately have to do in those situations.
Right.
Good deal. Well, LJ, thank you for spending time with us, and
Thanks.
again, thank you and your department for everything you've done to get our city prepared for this winter. Hopefully it's a mild one and we don't have to call on these resources too often, but when we do, we know you and your staff are there.
Thanks.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. That will do it for this edition of On the Scene. I'm your host, Tim Kelly. We'll see you again next time.